All right, guys, we're back with another one. In this video, I'm just gonna kind of give a review and give you my opinions of Monster Hunter Wilds. This is my first video game review video. Hopefully, it's the first of many. But I'm just gonna mainly talk about kind of like the three aspects that I think a lot of gamers look for and are drawn to in video games, and that's graphics, story, and gameplay. And then at the end, I'll just kind of give a little bit of just kind of an overall opinion. If I think Wilds is worth playing. Is it worth picking up? Is it worth buying? Is it worth putting hours into? And we'll just go from there. So to start off, we're gonna start with graphics. Now, to be honest, I think Wilds looks great. I think it runs well. I know when Wilds first came out, a lot of PC gamers were having issues with graphics, and I think they still are. I believe Capcom is trying to improve that and get that fixed for PC gamers. But I've been playing Wilds on an Xbox Series X, so the game looks great for me. I did have some issues, some graphical issues when I was playing the beta, but I mean that was the beta. So I really don't have too much to say on the graphics. I think it looks good. It runs well, and I just kind of hope that Capcom can really fix those issues, those graphical issues that everybody on the PC is having with the game. Moving on to story now. To be honest, I didn't really care for the story. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was bad. I just really didn't care for it. And I think that a lot of that is because Monster Hunter Wilds is only the third Monster Hunter game I've ever played. The only Monster Hunter games I've played are World, Rise, and Wilds. So I don't feel I'm a true veteran of the series, and so when the game got announced, I was still coming off the high of World, where I was really fell into that loop of hunting monsters, making gear, hunting monsters, making better gear. So I was really excited to get a newer Monster Hunter game and get that, just a newer version of that, just a continuation of that, just a newer installment. So when Wilds got announced, I was really kind of hoping that there wasn't gonna be a story. Now I can understand if you're a true veteran of the Monster Hunter games, you've been playing them since the first one that came out on the PlayStation 2. If you're a true veteran of the game, I can understand why you'd maybe want them to finally put some story into the game, kind of freshen things up, kind of change things up. But from what I've been seeing online, a lot of people didn't really like the story at all. And then I think a lot of people who were both new fans of the series and true veterans of the series, I don't think really anybody liked the story. Hopefully maybe when they release the DLC, maybe they'll add some better story elements to the story. Maybe introduce some new characters. Maybe introduce make some interesting side quests. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really want a story. I was excited to just to keep continuing playing a Monster Hunter game that just focused on gameplay. I didn't want a story, to be honest with you, because I mean, a lot of games that are coming out nowadays, like the story, the campaign is just, not very entertaining. The characters are boring. They're in, the campaign, it's just not really worth it. And so when Wilds got announced, I was excited. I was like, yes, I'm about to get a game where the gameplay is good. I know it's good because, I'm playing World and I love the gameplay. But on top of that, I'm going to get a game that's got good gameplay that keeps me entertained, gameplay that keeps me coming back to the game. And I don't have to worry about, I don't have to worry about some campaign or story that may or may not be good. Like, I don't have to worry about that because I know I'm going to be playing this game solely for the gameplay. And, like I said, a lot of people, didn't like the story. And I know everybody thinks, Gemma's really super hot and wants to be the nail to her hammer. But I didn't really care for the story. I didn't really care for any of the characters. To be honest, I kind of thought Nato was kind of annoying. I didn't care for Alma or Olivia or really just any of the characters in the story. So overall story-wise, I don't think the story is that great. Again, I didn't want a story to begin with. So if you're buying this game hoping that the story is really good, it's not. It's not. And there's, honestly, don't think there's, yes, this Monster Hunter does have a story, but honestly, I don't think there's really much to the story. At least not enough to make it, interesting, or not enough for the game to be appealing, not enough to play the game just for the story. So moving on to gameplay. So I like the gameplay of Wilds right now. I think it feels good. I think it's fun. I think it's very engaging. And I think it's in a good spot right now. The difficulty is in a good spot. Now, I know a lot of people say that Wilds is too easy. And, I kind of agree with that a little bit. And, I think a lot of that is because Wilds really uses and has a lot of these same aspects that made Rise that made Rise easy. And those aspects are the mount, the focus strike, and the wound system. The mount, man, the mount is just crazy. One of the things about the mount is that the mount really kind of eliminates the need to learn the map, along with kind of really taking away the element of actually kind of hunting or tracking the monster. Because, I mean, in Wilds, you start a quest, you hop on your mount, you open up your map, you click on the monster, and the mount takes you straight to the monster. You don't have to track it down. You don't have to do anything like you had to in Worlds, where you had to run around on foot and pick up monster tracks and whatnot to find the monster. It takes you straight to the monster, and that's how it was in Rise. And Rise is definitely easier than World, at least I think. And on top of that, the mount really increases your recovery in the game. Like, because in World, you take a hit from a monster in World, you gotta get up. You kind of have to back away from the monster, kind of get away from it a little bit to be able to kind of heal, sharpen, and then go back into the fight with the monster. In Rise and in Wilds, you take a hit from a monster, You call that mount immediately. That mount is there in like 2 seconds, swoops you up, runs you off to safety. You can heal, you can sharpen, you can get yourself ready to get back into the fight in a flash. And obviously that is, I think, a huge part of why I think Wilds is easy, because that recovery time is just insane. Also, another aspect that makes Wilds easy is the focus strike, and the wound system. That focus strike mode, allows you to never miss. One of the things about World that made World difficult was that you really had to choose when to do your big move, your big attack, because if you didn't choose, accurately on that, the monster would move or the monster would get up and you would just completely whiff, your big attack. You would just completely miss your big attack on the monster. In Wilds, you don't have that issue at all. The focus strike just allows you to turn and aim at the monster no matter where the monster is at. Doesn't matter if it's in front of you, doesn't matter if the monster is behind you, to the side, to the left, to the right. You can turn and face that monster, and you can even turn and face that monster. You can even change your direction in the middle of attack too. So you're never missing an attack. You won't ever miss an attack. Once you get that focus strike down, you start kind of like, especially for me using the gun lance, when I do my big combo, towards the second half of that big combo, I stay in focus strike pretty much throughout the rest of that second combo, because that way I know if the monster starts to move, I can aim at the monster. I can aim myself at the monster to be able to finish out the rest of that big combo. So the focus strike just, you're never going to miss a hit again with the focus strike. Now moving to the wound system, I think the wound system is fun. I think it's engaging. I think it's entertaining. And I kind of like that new feature. I think, like I said, I think it's fun, but the wound system really does allow you to just kind of, really just allows you to kind of beat up on the monsters. Because, when you use a focus strike and you hit a wound and, you pop the wound, what have you, almost every time you do that, the monster will topple over and gives you a big opportunity to do a lot of damage to the monster. So I've been in some random teams or groups where we're all fighting a monster, right? And the monster, may have like 2 or 3 wounds, right? Somebody will hit a wound, pop the wound, the monster will topple over, giving everybody a huge opportunity to just unload onto the monster. In the instant that monster gets up, somebody else hits another wound, pops that wound, causes the monster to topple over again, giving everybody a huge opportunity to just, go to town on the monster. And then the monster gets up, and it's just a repeat. Somebody hits another wound, pops that wound, the monster topples over, and everyone is just beating up on the monster. So I do find the wound system entertaining. I think it's very engaging, but it does really allow you to just do ungodly amounts of damage to the monster, and especially with that skill, the Flayer skill that increases your damage on a wound. Like, you just do so much damage to a monster. It's crazy. But with all that being said, I think the difficulty of Monster Hunter Wilds right now is in a good spot. Like I said, I agree. I think it is easier than World. Definitely not as hard as World, but I do also think it's a little bit harder than Rise. Not by much, but I still think it's still a little bit harder than Rise. I think it kind of just sits in the middle between World and Rise in difficulty, and I think that's a good area to be. Because that really allows Capcom with the difficulty being in between World and Rise. It really kind of gives Capcom that chance to really promote this game to a wider audience. Because when World came out, everyone was like, "Oh, it's too hard, it's too hard," and then when Wilds came out, everyone was like, "Oh, it's too easy, it's too easy." So it's like Capcom's gonna hear it from gamers regardless if they make it hard or if they make it easy. So I think where it's at right now is good because yes, like I said, there are easy the game is fairly easy, especially a lot of those beginning monsters and some of the the monsters that you fight like towards the middle or halfway through the campaign. Like some of those monsters can be beaten pretty fairly easily. But there are still some challenging fights in the game. With the introduction of these 8-star Apex monsters and 8-star Gorn Magala, like there are some challenging fights in the game. Especially the arena or like the challenge quest. Like some of those quests are some of those fights are pretty hard. So I think the difficulty for the game right now is in a good spot. It definitely allows newer fans of the game to really be able to get into the game, get into that loop of hunting monsters, making gear, hunting monsters, right? And veterans of the series, yeah, they might think the game is easy, but gamers are resilient, and they're resourceful, and so if so there are going to be gamers out there or true fans of Monster Hunter that are going to maybe do things that allow the game to be a little bit more of a challenge for them. So I know what's his name, Rurikon, I think it is. I know that one way that he tends to make the game harder for himself is that he doesn't take a Palico with him. He'll go on monster hunts just by himself without the Palico, which makes the fight much more harder. So I think the difficulty right now for the game is in a good spot. I think the gameplay is in a good spot. It is kind of easy, but there are some challenging fights. It's not too hard. It really allows newer fans of the series to really be able to fall into that Monster Hunter loop, and I think that's a good place for the game to be right now. Hopefully with the introduction of the DLC that I don't think they've announced yet, but we all know is going to come. I'm hoping that they don't make the DLC really hard. I do want them to I do want the DLC. I really do want the DLC to have some challenge. But I'm not hoping that Capcom's like, oh, everyone says the game's too hard, so let's make the DLC really hard. It's like, I don't really hope they do that. I kind of hope they keep the difficulty where it's at right now, and just continue to kind of bring some challenging fights into the game. So I think the difficulty is at a good spot right now, which I think is an overall good spot for the gameplay in general. So last but not least, just kind of an overall opinion. I think Wilds is good. I think it's fun. I think it looks good. I think it runs well. Well, if you're on a console, if you're on PC and you're having some issues with running it, I'm sorry. I kind of hope you get that figured out. Because like I said, this game is fun. It's entertaining. It's entertaining. The gameplay is fun. And once you kind of fall into that loop, like you'll dump hours into this game. If this is your first Monster Hunter game, you're gonna love it. there is going to be a little bit of a little bit of a learning curve, especially when it comes to choosing a weapon. I mean, there's 14 different weapon types, so it might take you a minute to kind of find that weapon that you feel truly comfortable with. But once you find that weapon, you're gonna take off. Like, this game is the gameplay for this game is so fun. Again, the story is nothing to write home about. It's I don't think the story is very engaging. Like I said earlier, I know everybody thinks Jin was hot, but I didn't really. I couldn't really connect with any of the characters, and I kind of thought Nata was, kind of annoying. And I personally just kind of wish they, hadn't introduced the story and they just, kind of focused mainly on gameplay. So the story's not really anything to, to rave about. Now, if you're a true veteran of the series, like you've been playing all these Monster Hunter games since like the first one, I think you're gonna have fun with Wilds. I definitely think it's worth your time. Now, if you find one of the older installments to be your favorite Monster Hunter game, Wilds is definitely not going to sway you from that opinion. I definitely think if you find one of the older Monster Hunter games to be your favorite, then it's still going to be your favorite even after playing Wilds. But I think Wilds is still going to be very fun for you. I think you're still going to find it entertaining and enjoyable to play. So in the end, do I think Monster Hunter Wild is worth buying and playing? Absolutely. I think it is 100% worth picking up and getting into, especially with Title Update 2 coming out here at the end of this month. I think Wilds is a good game and it is definitely worth the play. Thanks, guys, and hope to see you in the next one.